Hello, my name is James Hunter, and this is my 2 cents channel where I talk about a variety of topics from physical fitness, mental health, and other issues that I might bring up that are of concern or interest. Today I'm going to talk about stretching, the different types of stretching, and more specifically, what does stretching have to do with working out in terms of when's a good time to do it, before working out, during, or after. There's been different videos about this. There's definitely been different studies and research that have been done. I'm going to actually cite 3 studies in this video, and in the description I'll go ahead and put them below if you're curious as far as actually looking at the references that I'll use. But before I get into these actually research, these studies that have been done that do indicate and show that stretching before you work out has a negative impact on strength and performance, and different measures such as your strength in the weight room, bench press, squat, and so on. Vertical jump, then you can look at other measures, and we're going to talk about that more in this video. But what I want to do is kind of break down the different types of stretching. Some of you may already be aware of this, so it just may be a quick review. Some of you are maybe new to working out, and that's why I'm doing this video, is for you guys or ladies who may be new to working out. So let's look at the different types of stretching first. There's static stretching. Essentially, static stretching, you're going to move or stretch the muscle at a steady or constant speed in which there's a stationary point you want to get to. So if I, for example, am going to stretch my chest, you see people sometimes will have their arms slowly pull back within the range of motion the joint's going to allow to stretch the muscle, and they'll hold it for a measure of time depending on what their tolerance is. For those of you who ran track, you may be doing a hurdle stretch. I'm going to try to put my nose on my knee while keeping my legs stiff, and I'm reaching forward at a constant speed until I reach what I can tolerate in terms of my range of motion or the flexibility in the muscle. So there's 2 types of static stretching. You have active static stretching, is like the examples one of the examples I just mentioned, rather, with the hurdler stretch, as where you are providing the force. You are acting on the muscle that's being stretched. So if I'm going to stretch my shoulder muscle or lat, I am providing the force right now on my arm to get the stretch. If I want to stretch the hamstring, same thing. I can bend down, try to grab my ankles and pull my torso or my body towards my legs to get that stretch. You get the idea. You're the one providing that force. However, with passive static stretching, you're having an external force that is working on you, or something external providing the force to stretch the muscle. Some of you may use bands. You'll put the band on your foot, you'll relax your leg, and you pull your leg back to stretch the hamstring, and so on. You may stretch your calves that way by pulling on the top part of your foot with a band. Or, again, with the track and field example, those of us who've had a stretching partner when we're getting ready, when we're doing our stretching, we'll then our back relax. A person provides the external force while you relax the leg, and they'll push it back to what you can tolerate within the acceptable range of motion for the joint that's being involved. So you get the idea. Active and passive stretching, 2 situations. Point out the difference because one of the studies does use passive static stretching before the performance measures I'm going to talk about. So the third one is one that I personally do not recommend it. It's ballistic stretching. You're basically just bouncing, jerky movements. It's uncontrolled. It has less control, rather, and you run the risk of pulling muscles or danger of exceeding the extensibility limits of tissue muscle. So there's a potential for injuries on that. Ballistic stretching, and you might see somebody bouncing up and down. The video that I'm doing right now, the angle of the camera won't let me demonstrate that, but you may have seen people basically bouncing up and down and doing jerky type movements. That is ballistic stretching. In short, just a general way of looking at it. So there's other examples that you could maybe find, but the one I see a lot is the people, if they want to stretch their legs, they just kind of bounce their arms and torso down towards the ground and jerk it back up. So I don't advise this because it can have some possible negative adverse effects, as mentioned. You can pull a muscle and do some damage. So the fourth one up here is the one that I'm going to talk more about after the studies I cite, but I'm going to briefly kind of just touch on it right now, is dynamic stretching, or as I like to think of, is dynamically warming up to perform the movement that I'm about to do. So real quick, like if I'm going to bench press, I don't want to advise, or I wouldn't advise to have someone stretch. I've seen people doing it in the gym before. You have a person behind you, passive static. They're going to pull the arms back, stretch the pecs, your pectoralis majoralis, all that whole muscle is going to be stretched back, the whole system right here. So when that gets pulled to within the range that your joint's going to allow for, what you got to think about is when you bench press, that's beyond the range that is going to be necessary. When you bench press, you're going to bring the barbell to your chest about here, and that's it. So dynamically stretching and warming up, that's all I want to be, or where I want to be. I'm just going to be, right there, no more. And that's what I want to do before I do the bench press or work out, is dynamically stretch or warm up with, the barbell, add some weight, and just kind of go from there as I increase the loads before I may do a 1 rep max, for example. So if I'm doing a passive stretch, having somebody pull from behind, think about that. I am stretching the chest muscle beyond what is necessary for the movement that will be involved in the actual lift of the bench press. So something to think about. It'll maybe make a little more sense when I get into some of these studies I'm going to talk about. So let's go ahead. I'm going to cite the first study, and you can go ahead and look this up if you want. It'll be in the description. These are with the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research with the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So volume 27, number 8, August 2013. And the name of the study is Experience and Resistance Training Does Not Prevent Reduction in Muscle Strength Evoked by Passive Static Stretching. So on this study, they're essentially looking at people that are experienced in resistance training versus people who don't lift, who don't work out at all. So does it matter if you're somebody who works out, has some strength and conditioning? Will you not be as affected because you have that strength and conditioning developed over time? So what they have found in this particular study is that the way they broke it down is that they tested individuals as far as performance measures for upper body and lower body measures. And the list that they had right here were horizontal bench press, upper back row, like a lat pull down, bicep curl, the 45-degree angle leg press. These are amongst some of the lists that they were testing for. So they did passive static stretching applied to the muscle groups that were being tested. So when they did this beforehand, the results for the 1 rep max, the maximum muscular strength achieved was significantly reduced when test subjects stretched before the 1 rep max. The decrease in upper body and lower body strength occurred in both people who have experienced training versus those who are untrained subjects. And the control, which would be the people who didn't stretch, and also you're going to see some differences there as far as if you're have people that are fairly equally balanced in strength. But you don't have to do that. You can just get a baseline on yourself. What is your 1 rep max, which they did in this study? They got baseline measures of individuals, 1 rep max on the horizontal bench press, for example, without stretching. And then when they repeated the conditions with the exception, the independent variable, which is passive static stretching before the 1 rep max, then they saw the decrease in strength. They lost strength. So let's talk about that real quick. You can read on different ways of viewing muscle. It eccentrically expands and concentrically it contracts. So very familiar terms, nothing new in regards to that. But if you think of bands or rubber bands, when you stretch a band and you hold it and you stretch it and hold it, after a while when you let go, it's temporarily loose. It takes longer to return to its original length. It loses some of that elastic energy, if you will. So you can read in different literature, and they talk about muscles storing elastic energy, if that's a concept they use. In fact, with deadlifters, a particular university did a study, and what they were looking at is when the individuals go down to set up for the deadlift, how long they stay down there, the longer they stay down there, had an effect on their performance or how much strength they had coming back up. Because when you sit down into a deadlift to set up, you are essentially expanding or stretching some muscles on the way down. So the longer you're down there, it's going to have more of a negative effect over time. I believe the numbers may have been a reduction as much as 25-30% the loss of elastic energy. So that's one interesting concept, and the people that they look at in these studies tend to be trained individuals, athletes, but you're talking about, human, anatomy as far as the muscles and so on. Like the first study I just mentioned, they compared untrained and trained. It tends to be, a situation that's fairly consistent with individuals, and as far as what we're looking at here. So let's look at the next study. I'm not going to try to go in every single detail of these. I'd be here all day with this video, but you can look up the description if you want to look up the studies for yourself. So the second study is the same thing, Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, but this is volume 23, number 2, from March 2009. The first one I mentioned was 2013. So this one looked at the effects of dynamic and static stretching on vertical jump performance and electromyographic activity. And so with this one, they're looking at different conditions here as far as the static stretching, but they're also including dynamic stretching, that kind of like that situation I was talking about earlier, as also a measure in terms of two different variables, what that measure is going to be afterwards. So in this study, they had athletes dynamically stretch, and other situations they had them passively stretch, and then they had the non-stretch condition where subjects didn't stretch at all. And then between the variables, they looked at where they saw decreases or the performance being negatively affected in terms of vertical jump. So with me, I ran track and field, and so vertical jump measures and things like that were important. If you were a high jumper, certainly in football, they test your vertical jump, basketball, and so on. Typically, if you're strong in the squat, and in that area, that tends to be a positive correlation with a vertical jump. The more weight you can squat, typically you're going to have a higher vertical jump because you're stronger. So you're looking at, that quick twitch muscle fiber explosiveness, if you will, just to put it simply or generally when you look at that situation. So, the potential for the muscles to operate optimally, is something that you may want to take in consideration if you're trying to get your best vertical jump. So stretching before or after, let's take a look at the study. So in this study of vertical jump, they had college athletes, football players, hockey players, etc. So significant differences in jump performance. There was a 4.2% reduction in vertical jump height in the static stretch conditions as compared to the control group, the non-stretched condition. So in this situation, there was a 4.2% reduction in the vertical jump. So let's take a look at the next one though, which is really more telling as far as when we're looking at dynamic stretching. So they compared the difference for people who dynamically stretched and then did a vertical jump, and then they tried it again, but with doing the static stretching between those two measures, they saw the largest decrease which occurred, which was a 9.4% reduction in the vertical jump. They lost that much on the vertical jump, a 9.4% reduction. So you're seeing significant, loss or decreases in performance here based on what type of stretching or what type of approach you're using before a performance measure. Static stretching, based on these studies we're looking at so far, it's indicating that it has a negative effect. It adversely affects performance. The dynamic stretching warm-up situation actually was shown in the discussion of this study to actually increase performance. So when they looked at the electromyographic activity in the vastus medialis area, which is your thigh, I believe it's like more the inner thigh. For those of you who are real hardcore about being accurate in human anatomy, you want to pull your chart up. You can look in that area. That's where they were doing the measures at. They saw a significant increase in activity when they were measuring in that area for these athletes after doing the dynamic stretching. So that's something to think about in terms of, you know, what's going to be effective, what's going to work. The last study, real quick, the same research journal, Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research. This one's volume 24, number 3, March 2010. And it looked at the acute effects of static stretching on squat jump performance at different knee starting angles. So this one, just to jump to the conclusion, or cut to the chase rather, when they looked at this study on squat jump performance, no surprise, in the conditions where they did static stretching beforehand, they had a decrease or a reduction in performance. So those are 3 studies right there. I'll put them in the description, and you can look at them for yourself. For me, when I made this video, I wanted to make it for people who are more novice or new to weight training, and maybe they've never competed before, or maybe they have a goal to try to improve physical performance. And this is something that's important. There are other individuals who've talked about this issue, and there's certainly a lot more studies than I pointed out. I just wanted to cite the 3 that I did. A lot of times you hear videos and people will say, well, Google it or look it up. So I figured I'd try to do a little better than that and give you a few studies that you can actually look up. And those journals are with the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So with myself, I'm 48 years old. I'll be 48 actually in a couple months, but I'm already rounding it up. Why not? To me, it doesn't matter. In my life, I've played football, ran track and field. I've competed in powerlifting. I still plan to hit a meet again, maybe in the fall. And I do competitive bodybuilding in the MPC. Done open bodybuilding, and I'm probably going to do classic physique this summer. So I do different things to challenge myself and work out. So what I have noticed before I read studies, or before I kind of started getting into more academic as far as research and the education part of it that you can do, I just intuitively kind of figured things out as far as listening to my body, and then just through experience. I always noticed that if I stretch before I try to bench press, or stretch too much, my quads before, trying to do a 1 rep max on my squat or a vertical jump, I just didn't feel right. I felt weaker. And I have observed people in the gym who haven't necessarily, maybe they just, for them, they may feel that's the best situation for them because maybe they haven't tried it differently as far as dynamically warming up or dynamic stretching. So what I see are individuals, I'll use the chest example again, passive static, or their arms are out, they're just not resistant. Somebody comes up behind and pulls those arms back within what the joint range of motion allows, and just really stretch the hell out of that muscle. And then they'll go ahead and get on the bench press and start working out, and that has to weaken them. It's not, I don't think that helps. So staying within the range of motion only necessary for that movement. Again, the barbell is only going to come to your chest. It doesn't sink into your chest and keep going. So just visualize that. Where does the barbell come down to? Keep your movement in there if you're going to dynamically stretch, warm up, however you want to describe that situation. So with that in mind, have I seen people get injuries? Yes, I have. I've seen a person one time at a powerlifting meet. He was going this full-on stretching, like Jane Fonda style. I'm not making fun of Jane Fonda, but he was doing a lot of passive static stretching, had somebody pushing his leg back and so on. And he was doing this before the squat, which is typically the first lift of a powerlifting meet. And this individual, he didn't even get out of his, he may have got his first lift. The second one, he ended up pulling a quad muscle and got injured. So in my opinion, was that a contributing factor? Yeah, I would say it contributed, definitely, because you're weakening the muscle, especially if you're just really spending a lot of time stretching as long as this individual did. So I have seen situations where people either pulled a muscle or you can see a difference in the performance. And myself, I figured out that just basically moving the muscle within the range of motion only needed for what I'm going to do is suffice. So if I'm going to do a vertical jump, I may snap my legs up and down, keep them at 90-degree angles while snapping them up. I may do a little bit of a up to 3/4 speed form running. I might do some bounding, some bouncing, and so on, and just do squat jumps. Slowly build up. Let my body get ready and prepare for the movement it's going to do by, sounds pretty simple, doing that movement. So I don't need to stretch, passive or active static stretch, and I don't need to do that for me to be safe in the gym, to be able to have a good workout. So when do you stretch? So for me, after I'm done working out, I'll go ahead and stretch afterwards at the very end. So there's nothing wrong with static stretch, and it has its place if you do it safely, staying in within the range of motion, safe for your joints, and not trying to force it out of what it can handle or tolerate, so you don't injure yourself or your tissue, muscle tissue, or connective tissues. So that's pretty much, the main thing I want to get at in the video is the stretching. Everybody's going to be different. You may have different needs. You may not be trying to do 1-rep maxes. You may not be trying to compete or, get your best vertical jump, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you, at a minimum, think about it in terms of do the benefits outweigh the risk to you getting hurt. So you may want to incorporate more dynamic type warming up, dynamic stretching. Those two terms, depending on what you're talking about, I've heard individuals use those interchangeably. I like to think of it as just doing as approximate, close to the movement as possible to warm up, and versus actually traditional type static stretching that we're talking about. If you're doing weightlifting, it's going to be a different situation than if you're going to get ready to do a sprint out in a football field or something. So these are my thoughts. The studies I cited, again, they'll be in the description. If you have any thoughts about this, feel free to leave some comments below. If you appreciate the information, like the video, subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it. Try to put out more information and videos. My background is both in physical fitness and mental health, over the last 20 years. And so I kind of make videos on different topics related to wellness, and sometimes I will make a video like this to try to help people train smarter or to not get injured or get hurt. So hope you have a good day, and if you have any suggestions for any videos that you'd like to see me make on a different topic, drop it below in the comment and I'll be glad to take a look at it. Until I make another video, have a nice day.